Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Barrie, and I'm delighted to be with you for the first in this series of online conversations entitled From Doing Yoga to Being Yoga. I'm the author of the book, Evolving Your Yoga, 10 Principles for Enlightened Practice. And in this series of talks, I'm going to be exploring what it means to bring your yoga off the mat and into your life, and how to do it in ways that feel really authentic and meaningful to you, in ways that add more joy and purpose to your yoga practice itself, and that help you bring that sense of joy and purpose into your everyday life. So, although deepening practice, integrating practice, expanding the benefits of practice in your life is something I have been talking about, thinking about, and writing about for many years, I really wanted to offer this series of talks now in particular because I think it is such an important time for all of us, continuing yoga students, yoga teachers, to really take stock of what yoga means for us, how it can serve us in our lives, and if we're teachers, how it can support our students. And many of the people that I work with are longtime students and yoga teachers. And if that is you, I know I don't have to tell you that over this past year, along with everything else we've experienced, I think one thing we've all learned is that our practice is there for us, no matter what's going on in times of most uncertainty and tumult. There are practices, there are understandings that we can fall back on. And in fact, the teachings, the understandings, the approaches to practice that we have been thinking about, studying, talking about for so many years, I've heard so many stories about how those things have come to support us, to encourage us, provide comfort, and really a sense of inner stability and direction as we've navigated the challenges of the past year. So I think it's so encouraging to understand and to recognize that there's really nowhere else we need to look for inspiration and meaning other than our own tradition. And yet, it can be so easy to get lost, I think, in all the ways our practice and teaching has been turned on its head as we've had to change and adapt over the past year. It is easy to get disconnected from our why, from our purpose, from the purpose of our practice. So while all the ways that we are doing yoga right now might look different, the reasons why we practice and the importance of bringing practice into our lives, integrating the benefits of practice in our lives to support us, all that is more valuable than ever and more needed now than ever before. So that's really what these sessions are about, to continue to have the conversations that will help you bring yourself back to the heart of your practice, to help you connect with what yoga means to you and remember what it's really all about, why we do it, and how it can serve us in our lives. And I'm not just going to be telling you that, but hopefully I'm going to be giving you ways for you to discover that for yourself so that you can know how and why your practice is working for you. I'd like to start by telling you a little bit about my approach to yoga practice that has developed over the years. I've been a full-time yoga teacher for 23 years. I did my first teacher training in 1993. My background is in alignment-based yoga. I was an Anusara yoga teacher and teacher trainer for many years. I've been a longtime student of Iyengar yoga. And I've been interested in yoga as a transformational practice right from the beginning, right from my very first classes. My very first teacher on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, she used to say, yoga is a path that takes all of us with it. No part gets left behind. And I remember the first time I heard that, I think it was the first teaching given within a yogic context that really brought tears to my eyes, that just touched me with its promise of wholeness and healing, that yoga could be a path of integrating all the parts of myself in an expansive and positive and growthful way. And that has remained true over the years. But one thing I've also learned is that yoga is an integrated path toward wholeness and healing only if we make it that, only if we choose to engage with it that way. So over the years, I've seen the yoga world change immensely. I've seen it become a billion-dollar industry that is part of the mainstream North American fitness culture. And over the years, I understood in my own practice and in the students that I taught that there is really a whole generation of us who have been doing yoga for some time, who've been practicing it regularly. We know yoga works in our lives, but we don't necessarily know how or why. And I think we get a sense that the physical practice is just kind of the tip of the iceberg when it comes to what yoga can offer us, but it's really only in the context of teacher training that we really get that understanding. And of course, many people do yoga for the physical benefits, for the health benefits, for stress relief, for general physical well-being, which is great. And we also know that that is not only all of what yoga has to offer us. So for those of us who are interested in using yoga as part of our path of self-discovery, personal growth, inner development, whatever you want to call it, I started to ask myself, what are the approaches to practice, the understandings that help one take yoga deeper, that help one get benefit beyond what we do on the mat? What makes yoga a transformational practice, something that shifts us as human beings and the way that we live in the world? So I started to look at my own experience of evolution on the path of yoga, and I started to observe and think about what teachings and understandings held true for my students in terms of what are the underlying beliefs that allow postural practice to become part of one's path of personal growth. What were the recurring themes from my teaching that and my study that formed the underpinning of asana, that form the underpinning of my asana practice as a means of personal growth, and what teachings have been instrumental for me and my students in bringing postural practice into the realm of a spiritual practice. So this is really what my book is about. I interviewed 25 well-known longtime teachers, but I'm going to be sharing, in this series, I'll be sharing some of what they told me as well, scholars, students, etc. And that was really how I came up with what I call principles for enlightened practice. So principles for enlightened practice are, I'm going to share my screen here. So I define principles for enlightened practice as strategies that guide, inform, and illuminate our actions in yoga, infusing our practice with spiritual insight. So strategies that guide, inform, and illuminate our actions in yoga, infusing our practice with spiritual insight. And so I have 10 in my book, and I outline them. There are sequences, there are practices around all of them. Okay. So the principles in my book are really intended to illuminate and enrich yoga practice by providing a solid foundation that allows your practice to become deeper and richer than ever before. And the principles that I developed, what I've learned since the book was released in 2019, is that they do really work to empower students and teachers with approaches that allow yoga practice to unfold and expand as a journey of self-discovery and inner growth. I think sometimes we get so caught up in the outer form that yoga takes, both in the marketplace and even in our own communities and local studios, that it's really easy to get disconnected from owning our own experience of the practice and how it's been meaningful for us and how it's really working in our lives. And when I was writing the book, I started giving talks to small groups that focused on these exact questions, having people really identify and articulate the ways yoga is serving them. And many people, longtime students and teachers even, were surprised that they had not really done so much of that before. Like they hadn't really clearly articulated, how yoga helps them to be a parent, how yoga helps them in their work, very practical things like giving your wrist relief from typing, or using the breath to become a more patient parent, or practicing Tadasana, or a standing pose before a presentation to not be so nervous, right? Or just being conscious of the way that we hold ourselves in space, being more present to enjoy the preparation of a meal. All of these little things, right, are ways that we bring yoga into our lives. And of course, that, I think, again, has become all the more evident and clear to us over the past year. And I think even those of us who are teachers may not be accustomed to articulating the ways yoga is serving us in our lives. And I think this is a really crucial step to taking ownership of the practice, to empowering ourselves to make the practice our own, because then we are able to evolve and use it. We know exactly how it works for us. We know what we can trust. We know what we can rely on. And we develop an interactive, ongoing relationship with practice in this way. Now, when I wrote the book, I could never have foreseen how the world would have changed, how we would be practicing and using yoga over the past year. And honestly, at the start of the pandemic, I kind of wondered how the principles would hold up. I mean, I was very conscious of calling them principles, like, are they really truisms? Or can they really apply to any style of yoga? And I really think they can, and they are. And that's why I use that word. But I did wonder at the beginning of the pandemic how they would hold up. And my experience is that they do hold true, and I've gotten feedback. I regularly receive feedback from students and readers telling me the same thing. So that's been really gratifying to hear and to learn and experience. So what I want to talk to you about today is a framework for understanding how yoga works in our lives, and a way to consider your own evolution and development on the path of yoga. And before I get into that, I want to take a moment to give a shout out to the sponsor of these series, which is Offering Tree. So Offering Tree, I've gotten to know the team and the products at Offering Tree over the past few months. They are an all-in-one platform that makes it really easy for yoga teachers and wellness professionals to sell courses, teach classes, manage memberships. And you just have to have one account. Their platform is super user-friendly and simple. So if you've been feeling overwhelmed when it comes to your online classes and your online presence, I want to suggest that you check out Offering Tree, because I think they can really help you save time, energy, and money. You can create a website in under 30 minutes. It becomes really easy to teach online, to send out Zoom links, to accept payments. And even as you grow your business, Offering Tree's free resources and community is there to support you. And as I've gotten to know them over the past few months, there's another thing I've noticed that I've been really impressed by, which is that this company is really dedicated to supporting independent yoga teachers. So they are very community focused. The support you receive will be personalized. They'll know your name. They'll help you build your business. And they invest their time and their money as a company in giving back to the wellness community. So if you want to check them out, I'm going to pop a link into the comments at the end of this video. You'll get a discount, 50% off the first 3 months, or 15% off an annual plan with the link that I'm going to share with you. Okay, so let's get back to how yoga works in your life, and a framework to consider your own evolution and development on the path of yoga. So this is I had a video here. I'm not going to sure if it's going to show up. I think Facebook is showing up. So I had a video of the Chambered Nautilus, which that's what I want to talk about. So let me try to share my screen again, see if it'll work. It's a really cute video. Okay, so here's the Chambered Nautilus. So the chambered nautilus is a really cool animal. It is one of the most ancient life forms. It has remained pretty much unchanged for over 350 million years. It lives in the depth of the ocean. And here, let's see, here is the shell of the chambered nautilus. This is its shell. So the interesting thing, one of the many interesting things actually about the Nautilus shell is that as that animal that you just saw, as the animal grows, it builds larger and larger chambers for itself to live in. And as it does that, so it lives in the outermost chamber and it seals off the smaller ones. And those become filled with gases that allow it to stay buoyant and actually act like a jet propulsion. And that's how it moves and that's how it turns. It pumps air through those chambers that move it through the water. And so that's just a really cool thing that it does that. And of course, the spiral shape itself is found throughout nature and across cultures as a universal symbol, really, of movement, of energy, of expansion that radiates from the center outward. So in the Tibetan tradition, the spiral represents the origin of the universe and the creation of the universe. The Mayan tradition conceives of time as moving in spirals. And of course, in the yogic tradition, Kundalini Shakti, the power of our spiritual evolution, is envisioned as a serpent that's spiraled around the base of the spine and spirals upwards when awakened within a seeker. But let's go back to the Nautilus shell now. So the Nautilus shell, I think of the Nautilus shell, the spiraled construction of the Nautilus shell, as a framework within which we can view our own path and evolution in yoga. And I think about this as a two-way movement of yoga sadhana. And when I say sadhana, I mean a path of practices, the things that we do that we consider yoga. So like the chambers of the Nautilus shell, we can view our path as yogis as evolving into progressively more expanded states of being over time, right? The lessons that we've learned, the understandings that we gain and have assimilated through practice and through reflection, those become part of who we are. And we use that deepening self-knowledge and increased self-trust and sensitivity, the ability to listen and to respond to ourselves. We use that to grow as human beings. And this, I think, is how the practice deepens and evolves over time, and how yoga over time results in progressively more expanded and fulfilling ways of being, both within ourselves and within the world. And there's also a wonderful paradox inherent in the chambered nautilus, which is that the nautilus is one of the most ancient, as I said, life forms, stable, has remained unchanged for hundreds of millions of years. And at the same time, it is ever evolving, right? Its spiral shape, it continues throughout its lifetime to create this shell. So there's a constant movement and change throughout the span of its lifetime. And I think there's something in this also that is reflected in our journey as yogis, that of course, yoga teaches that there is a stable, unchanging part of who we are that is our deepest essence, that is our deepest truth, a core of unchanging perfection. And like the spiral that expands outwards from the center, we too are always traveling back to that center place, to that source place, right? We're tapping into that wellspring of steadiness and stability of who we are and bringing that inner experience back into our outer lives. So I envision this as a two-way movement, that as we evolve in practice over time, we are both getting to know our inner being more and more and more. We're going deeper inside. and we're becoming happier, hopefully more fulfilled, living with a greater sense of purpose in our outer lives, gaining greater clarity, gaining greater meaning, right? So this two-way movement, going deeper in, getting to know our inner being, while at the same time becoming happier, more fulfilled, more capable in our outer lives. This is what I consider to be the two-way movement of yoga sadhana. So I invite you to consider some of these questions and this framework for your when looking at your own evolution and practice and your own journey from these two perspectives. What are the shifts that have happened along the way from these two perspectives, and how has yoga benefited you? So you can consider, what brought you to yoga initially, and then what kept you coming back? How have you developed over time, and how has your practice changed over time to meet your changing needs? How have you changed over time as a result of your practice, right? And how has the role of yoga shifted or changed over time as your life has changed over time? So these are all questions that are pertinent to reflecting on how yoga works in our lives and how we have evolved as a result of our practice. So I would love to know how this two-way framework resonates for you. You can share in the comments. And I also wanted to let you know that on evolvingyouryoga.com, I have a bunch of bonus content that's available to everyone. Even if you don't have the book, you can sign up for that. And there is a free visualization, audio recorded visualization on this two-way movement of the Nautilus Shell as a symbol for evolving practice. So you can get that. And of course, you can get the book on Amazon. And that's it for today. So I'll put all those links in the comments. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being interested in these questions and this conversation. I'd love to know how it resonates. I'll be back at the same time next week. And in next week's session, I'll be sharing what the 25 well-known teachers I interviewed for my book all said. The one thing that they all told me that they had in common, what they told me about how their practice has evolved over time. It's really interesting, I think. And I'll also be sharing some of my own personal story about how my practice has evolved, and in particular, how it's shifted over the past couple of years. So until then, I wish you all the best. See you soon. Bye-bye.